Okay. Let's see. Good. All right, audio's working. So, currently am a student at FSU. Got an upcoming test, and I figured I would just stream, I don't know, what I do to review. Hopefully you learn something. Hopefully you find it interesting. And I figured I might as well, so. First things first, I don't use this computer as often to do programming stuff. So I'm going to change some of the Vim settings, Vim is a text editor that I use. I'm going to copy these. I think this will do it. Come back here, and I'm going to open up vimrc, insert, and just paste these settings. Okay. I think I might have the commands wrong because that did not paste. Am I in insert mode? All right, you know what I think it is paste is a different button on the Windows for some reason. Okay, so what is paste command on Vim or Tectia, I guess? It would be Control Shift. Okay. I wasn't holding Shift. So basically, same thing. I guess not. That's bizarre. Who would have thought I'd run into problems already? I could just copy it by hand, but I don't want to do that. Control Shift V. Why the hell is that not working? Man, all right, that's definitely not the command. Let's see. The command is going to be what in the world? I just use Control V on my other computer and it works. Hold down Shift while pasting. I mean, it's not really working at all. Control R plus. What? This is bizarre. I don't understand why would they make this so complicated? So Control Shift C, copy to clipboard. And I mean, usually it's just done. Boom. Just use that. God, that was stupid. So let's see if, did I just make a file? vimrc. Well, I mean, it worked. So let's go into let's see, what directory should I go into? I will go into maybe notes, cd, maybe notes, probably notes, and let's work on I'm going to the next lecture notes and outlines, going into, probably should work on, this one example he gave of a card deck class, and it's embedded, so maybe I'll start with the composition of this, a display in timer class. Timer.h seems pretty simple. So display hours, minutes. So yeah, just for practice, let's open up a file called, should I just call it timer maybe? Or yeah, I'll just call it timer. So let me go into timer.h, create the header file. So this is where I'm gonna declare my class. I'm gonna say class timer. Oh shoot. Okay, let's see. Is there another hurricane coming in? I'm in Florida, so we just had a hurricane come right over Tallahassee, and now there's another one supposedly heading straight for the west coast of Florida. Damn. I mean, I guess hurricane season was delayed, but didn't know it was all going to hit at once. Honestly, not a big deal. It's annoying when class gets delayed because then in college, you have to just make it up. Like they'll just take away days out of your summer or long weekends and stuff, and you have to get a certain amount of hours. So they don't just let you miss the class, and like you got to make up the time one way or another. So we have class timer, and what I'm going to do, I'm just going to kind of follow the guideline that he put. So I'm doing it. So I have like good notes to look after. So no friend functions. I'm just going to create the public section. And in here, I am going to add, wait, how do I, that's not what I wanted to do. I think let me open full screen again. Okay. So I'm going to create a constructor, but explicit. So I don't want it to be a conversion constructor. Explicit display int n takes one parameter. Or to be a bit more descriptive, let's just make it int lim. It's gonna be the limit of our timer. So the user is going to enter a limit, and that's going to be the range what this object can be. So I'm kind of working with, I was going to work on, never mind, doesn't even matter. So I'm going to create an increment function, a set value function, get value, so the getters, so it's just a simple little class, show. I might just create an overloaded operator instead of a show function. Or I'll just do a show, actually, I don't really care. Could do both. Increment. So let's do void increment int n. So what we're going to do with that, and the Vim thing didn't work, which is a bit of a bummer. I wanted it to, but I'm not getting the colors like I wish I did. Maybe it'll work if I do this. So let's try vim rc. Insert, paste it here. Yeah, whatever, I don't really care. Okay, I'm not trying to, I don't like programming on this computer nearly as much, but it's all right. So void increment, let's create another function. Let's just call it void, no. Make it a bool set value. And what we're gonna do here is we're just gonna take an integer, and actually this one's void. Let's just make it no parameters. Int n. So this will increment timer by 1. Set value. I don't know what we're going to default to. I'm just kind of going off the notes here. Default to probably 0, but or if it's at the limit, then we're probably going to default to the limit. I don't want it to go above a certain value. Get value, get limit. Just simple getter functions. And just a show function. Very simple class. Not much to it. Just for practicing creating composite objects. So just to get a feel for it. Because I haven't practiced much of that, and it's going to be on my test in a couple days. So here in the private section, we're also going to practice using constants inside of data, inside of class member data. So const int limit and int value. And that's going to be the value of the timer. The limit is going to be the value that the timer is not going to go above. And so this is, you know what, I made a mistake. This I want to be the display object. And we're going to create, or the display class, we're going to create right below it a timer class in which we use display objects as class member data. So class timer down here. And what I'm going to do is, so we have the display class. I think that's all I want. And so I'm just going to add some notes so I don't get confused. Largest possible value for value. And then down here, between 0 and limit -1. That's going to be our range. And then for the class timer, come on down here. In the public section, we're just going to create a couple constructors. We're going to have an hours and a minutes object. So the public section, geez, I do not like this keyboard. It's awful. Like mashing all the keys. Public. And now let's just create our constructor here. Timer. This is going to default it to 0. It's going to default our timer to 0:0. So default to 0. And another one. And it's going to take hours and minutes. Set hours and mins. And that's going to work for that. void increment. This is going to be our incrementing function. So what we're going to do for this is it's going to add 1 minute to the timer. Right? And then we're going to have a set. And this is for setting the object after we've already created it. Good. Another show function. And you know what I just realized? Should I make the other show function up here and the getters constant? Always make your getters and things that do not change data constants. Always got to remember that. So like the show functions, those are going to be constant. They don't change any data. They're just showing data. We're not doing any inputting values there. So constants. And then we're going to do, interesting, timer add const. Wait, what do we, I'm going to add 2 timer objects together. So const, we're going to pass by const reference here. We don't need an actual copy of the object here. Make that const as well, because we're not changing the actual object. We're going to return an object, not changing the actual one that we're using though. Which reminded me, I might have to change something on my homework assignment. So down here in private, this is where we're going to create a couple of display objects. We're going to create display hours and minutes, but we're not going to initialize them here because I don't need a comma. Display hours. You know what? Do it on one line. Minutes. So this seems like a solid header file. I think we've got everything. Now what I want to do is create the definitions. So do that in a separate file. Open up timer.cpp. This is where we're going to create, we're going to define these functions. So let's see. I need to include IOStream for input output, and then also going to include timer.h. Using namespace standard. And so we're just going to first, okay. Display timer. This is our constructor. Did I make it int n? I can't even remember. Let me check. Display. Okay, I made it. Hold on, this is confusing me a little bit. We are so display timer. It's interesting. Wouldn't it be? Oh, it's display. Yeah, no, that makes a lot more sense. Okay, and it's the limit. Okay. And this is going to initialize our object to 0. What we're going to do here is use the limit, use the initialization list to initialize our constant member data. So I can't remember if there's a semicolon there. I don't think so. Because then that would... Actually, let's stay in here. I don't think there's a semicolon there. No, there's not. So initializing our constant data right here. Goodness, okay. Now, increment, and this is going to increment our function. Did I only have one? Yeah, so we're going to add one to value. So, and if we reach the limit, we're going to reset it to 0. So value plus plus, if value equals limit, value equals 0. So it's ensuring that we never exceed the limit. It's always going to be between 0 and the limit. And now let's define our display function. Set value. Int hours, int minutes. And the way I want this to work is we're going to return false if improper negative data is entered or if it's above the limit. And if it returns false, we're also going to set it equal to 0. Are we? Let's see. In his prototype, he has set value and timer. Okay, that makes sense. So, whoops. What we're going to do is say if value is less than 0. So this is invalid input. Or value, I did not mean to add a comma. Or if value is greater than or equal to our limit, then we are just going to return false and not set any data, because when we return the function, it breaks out. And otherwise, we're going to say value wait up. I messed up my parameters right here. So those were the parameters for the other function. These are the parameters for this class. So I'm going to add otherwise value equals val, and we're just going to return true. Good. Next function, I'm going to do just my getters. So let's do int get value. And we're simply just going to return value. Int get limit. And we're just going to return the limit. So that's a way that we can access that data. And then what I want to do here is define the show function. So what I'm going to do is so we want to display it in two windows, each with 2 digits. So like 00, 00, or colon 00. We always want to display 4 values. So that means that if the value is less than 10, we're going to print out a preceding 0. And so let's see, what exactly? Print out value, but value is, all right, this is where I'm getting a little confused. I'm not sure when I'm reading these notes, what exactly is value representing? Because we have the hours and minutes down here, but what the hell is value? Okay, so wait, I get it. It's the value of either the hours or the minutes object. They're separate objects. So if we like display minutes.value, we'll just display the minutes only. Hours.value will display the hours only. That makes sense. So if value is greater than or equal to 10, then, no, less than or equal to 10, my bad. Just simply less than 10. Then what we're going to do is output a preceding 0. Not an O, but a 0. And then perfect. And now we're going to move on to the timer class. So interesting. That's how that works. So timer, this is our constructor for the timer class. And what we do here is we initialize for our default value hours 24, minutes 60. I believe. So that's going to change the value. Okay, I need to run this through my head. What is going on when I do that? We are essentially creating an hours object, initializing it to 24. But what we're doing is we're setting, when we create the timer object, we're running these constructors, or we're creating these objects. But 24 is going to represent display limit, and it's going to create a limit for this object at 24, limit for this object at 26, because we're calling this function. We're calling this display constructor when we create these two objects. That makes sense. And so I don't even think we need to do anything here. It's just going to set the value to 0 in the limit. That's literally it. It's just an empty function. So all we're doing is just initializing. That's like an empty object. So the whole point of this constructor is just to initialize these objects. But then we have another constructor with these values, and we're going to initialize. This will allow us to set our own limits. So it'll be that's how we're going to initialize these. And that'll allow us to set our own limits, I think. Okay, no. See, actually, instead, the idea is we're still going to do 24 and 60, but we're just going to let this be the value. So hours, would it be hours not value? It might, let's see if I'm doing this right. So we're going to create a set function and call that. Okay. If set hours, comma minutes. Then we're just going to set it to 0. If they enter invalid input, we're setting it to 0. And in that case, let me check. Just gonna make sure I'm doing this right because it's all kind of new to me of like embedding these types of objects together. So I need to make sure I actually know what is going on with the function calls and stuff. So yeah, that makes sense. So we set our limits here, and then we call the set function. If it's false, default to 0. Never have invalid input. And then next we're going to do the increment function. Void timer increment. I don't think I added a parameter. It's just going to increment it by 1 anyway, so we're just going to do interesting. So he has it. I have 2 increment functions. So interesting. When we call the increment function inside the timer, then we're going to call the other increment function over here. Okay, so minutes. So this is the different function. So when this function is going to call this increment function on this object. So it will increment the minutes member data value by 1. And I'm not needing to turn cap locks on. And then if we have, let me check this. Timer, show. So if minutes.getValue is 0, then we'll increment the hours. Because what this one does is it checks for us. Okay, cool. That makes sense. That makes sense. So then this basically is saying if our minutes value gets overturned and passes 60 and gets reset to 0, then we're going to increment hours by 1. Interesting. So it's just, yeah. Next, I will do the set function. Did I have any? Okay. So we're not initializing any data here. So what we're going to do is just if the hours is less than 0 or greater than or equal to the limit, then we'll just return false. Same thing if the minutes is in the same scenario. And we're going to make no change if invalid input is entered. It's just going to remain as is. We're not going to do anything to it. Okay, so basically, if h is less than 0 or h is greater than or equal to hours dot get limit. Pretty sure that's how. I can't. Yeah. Then we are going to add. We're just going to return false and make no changes. Same thing if minutes is less than 0 or the minutes that they entered is greater than or equal to minutes dot limit get limit. Otherwise, if we don't return false at all and break from the function, then we're going to do hours dot set value h and minutes dot set value m and return true. Cool. So this means we have invalid input, stop the function, return false, otherwise set it, return true. Wait timer show, const. Don't forget the const. Sucks getting points taken off for that. You forget const in certain areas. My teacher stresses that a lot. So void timer show. And we're just going to call the other show functions here because this is where, so yeah, pretty straightforward. We're going to do hours dot show, and then we're just going to output a little colon and minutes dot show. And this is a different show function. It's not the same one that I'm working in. It's part of a different class. So pretty simple for that function. All of them are pretty simple. It's more about just knowing how these functions are communicating with one another. That's the important part. So now I'm going to do the timer add. I think the return type was timer on it. Yeah. And this function is just going to add 2 timer objects. Pretty simple. So we're going to create 2 new variables, int h and int m, and these are just going to be placeholders. And then we're going to, so there's just a couple ways I could do this. So the way he has this written out, get value. So I'll just do it the way he's doing it. Int h equals hours plus hours dot plus no t dot hold up a moment. That makes sense. So we can't explicitly use hours in this because hours is a part of the display object. So we can only use the getter function to access that data, which means this is the calling object, and we're going to add the parameter t dot hours dot get value to the calling object's value. There's a different way to do this where I could overload the operator, but I'm just going to make an add function instead. Oh, C++. It's I mean, people say C++ is more difficult than Python, but I don't know Python, honestly. I haven't taken any classes on it, and I haven't really like looked into Python or practiced it at all. So I've heard Python's very practical. It's good for proof of concept stuff. So what people will do is in like businesses, Python, you can get a lot done in very few lines of code, but it's not efficient and it can be very clunky and take up more space than is needed for the task at hand. So what people will do is they will do proof of concept with Python and show that this is possible and this is our idea, and they'll pitch it to the company. And then what happens is they'll get approved, and then they'll hire a team to go and write this program in a more primitive language, like maybe C++, and write everything out very much more efficiently and save space eventually. It saved a lot of CPU overhead and just makes things much more efficient. But they're kind of interchangeable when you learn one language. A good way to learn another is, so if you just write out code in a language that you know, copy paste it right into ChatGPT and say convert this into Java, and then see what the results are. That's a great way to actually learn different languages. And yeah, programming is a great way to start improving problem solving skills just in general. It's like when I first started it, it was a different type of thinking than I'd ever really done before. A very logical type of problem solving, and it was rough at first. And I'm still somewhat new to it, but it's like the more I do it, the easier it gets. the more you practice, the more your brain just starts understanding the language just much more naturally. And it becomes like you don't have to really strain and think about it as hard. It becomes more like a puzzle and much more fun and interesting. So what I wanted to do here though is, so I was creating an hours variable and adding up the two values for that. I want to do the same for minutes. So int minutes equals minutes plus t dot minutes dot get value. And so essentially what this is doing is we're creating this variable, and when we call, so let's see, hours dot get value, we're calling this function right here, and we're returning value for minutes of the timer object. So, and then we're adding that to the parameter that we passed in, and we're just returning the let's see, the same exact thing but for the parameter. So a call for this function would look like, if we had in like our main program a timer object called t1, we would do t1.add, and then say we wanted to add t2 to it. It'd be t1.add parentheses t2, and t1 would essentially be this value. T2 would stand for this value. Same thing here, t1, t2, and yeah, and so we're adding the two values, and then if we surpass the limit, let's see. So if we pass the limit, then we are going to obviously fix that by doing a little bit of if minutes is greater than or equal to, are we doing, I think it's minutes.getLimit, because the minutes.getLimit is for the object that is calling. They could have different, no, they don't have different values. Hold up. The limit is always 20. No. So the limit actually is what changes. But actually, no. Hold on. So the limit is just set to this. But when we, hold on, I'm trying to figure out, is the limit always, so these objects are always set to hours 24, minutes 60, which calls this and sets their limit to, no, it calls, wait, why is it, okay. So by doing this, we're calling a display. No. We're just initializing the objects here. But when we're initializing them, hold on, this is confusing me now. Where are my constructors? Here are these ones. Here are these ones. So it creates a display object. Hurricane update. Damn, I just got a notification about the hurricane update. That's wild if there's going to be another hurricane already. But yeah, I'm trying to work out what exactly. So let's just go through this step by step. I want to pull up my header function real quick. So in the timer class is where we create these objects. In the display class is where we have the limit variable and value variable. Okay. So when we come into here and create a new timer object, what's happening is we're initializing the hours and minutes to 24 and 60, but we're calling see, this is are we calling the display function? Display takes limit. Oh, it's because they're of display class. So yes, that's why I was forgetting that. I was forgetting that these two objects right here, I was forgetting these are part of the display class. So when we create them, we come up here to the display constructor, which is, did I not do it yet? Could have sworn I did it. Hold on. Okay, it's up here. Why is there a huge break right here? That's bizarre. Wait, what? You know what I'm gonna do is clear out all this junk so that I can see exactly what I'm working with. And it's all back. I don't understand. This is a weird display show. Timer. So I guess I didn't set up a display constructor yet, did I? No, I did. I don't know where it went though. What in the world? Show, set, increment. Am I? Oh, you know what it is? I'm pretty sure on Tectia, the scroll feature might be different. So if I go all the way up here, that's timer.h. So it's cutting off at line 34. I don't know why. That's actually really weird. This is why I usually am on a different computer. Here we go. Here we go. So no, that's the header file. This is weird. I don't like this. So what I'm going to do oh, it's C++. Is it? I don't know if that's like a meme or something. Is it usually not difficult for someone who speaks English? But I guess it's because it's in English, but it's yeah, C++, I feel like C++ is much less common. I'm actually very glad that it's what I was introduced to programming with, so But right now I'm having an issue with the client more than anything. So I'm figuring out possibly maybe because I'm not in insert mode. Nope. That's bizarre. Okay. Usually usually Control A, escape, shift up arrow. Why is it so complicated to scroll in Tectia? I don't understand why would that be unless my settings are user interface settings. Scroll to bottom. Let's see. Scroll back buffer size possibly. What is it? 500 lines. I'm not even anywhere near close to that. So let's find out. By I'm just gonna read. I'm gonna look it up. See, there's a command. So I have no idea. No idea, if I'm being honest. So let's try. Okay, I found it. That's super annoying though. The commands are just different. So I just totally lost. So when I create the object hours, minutes, I'm running this constructor. And when I run this constructor, it is creating. That's super weird. A limit at 24. So, oh, it's running this. Hours is right here. The 24 would be here. So the limit gets set to 24. That makes sense. So yeah, it's. I wish scroll used. I wish scroll worked so badly. So let's get back to, I was working on the add function. Let me try to get back to where I was. add, so it's like the last function I'm on basically. Yeah, so if minutes is greater than or equal to, I gotta turn my phone on silence. If it's greater than or equal to minutes.getLimit, then what we want to do is in here, minutes is going to equal, m is going to equal minutes minus, no, wait, can I do that? So we're going to do that, and then h equals h plus 1. So what that's doing is if we exceed our minutes in this new object, if we exceed the limit, then we're going to subtract the limit from the minutes and add 1 to the hour. So we're just turning over the minutes to the hour hand, basically. And then essentially the same thing. We don't have another indicator that's above hours. We don't have like a days slot, so, but we're still going to do if hours is greater than or equal to hours dot get limit, then we're going to just make it so that hours equals, or h equals h minus hours dot get limit, and then we're just going to pretend that there's no days timer. We would do days equals days plus 1, but we don't have one of those variables. So we're just going to assume it's like a timer, like much more like a clock. Clock doesn't have a days slot on it. It just turns over. And yeah, and I don't even need all this extra brackets here because it's just one line of code under that if statement. Okay. And then once we do that, we're just going to return, create an object and return it. Return timer hours, comma minutes. And that's our new timer object that we just created out of the addition of the two that we were trying to add together. So build and return result. All right, I'm probably gonna cut the stream off now. I need to do some other, so that's essentially, I'll probably later run a main function where I test all this stuff. I'm definitely going to actually, but streaming the programming is actually a little bit weird. Honestly, I don't know if I find it easier when I'm not streaming it, but I will stream, you know what, I think what will be much more interesting is my next project, because this is more me like studying kind of a new concept where it's like an object within another object, and I just haven't really done that much. And so I'm trying to just like get used to all the function calls and stuff and the function communication with one another. But when I'm actually working on a project, it's much easier for me to start articulating my thought process and problem solving. And I think it'll make for a much more interesting stream and a much more, yeah, just much more enjoyable stream. So I'll probably do that. Next project, I'll stream it and I'll work through my whole thought process, everything that's going on in my head while I'm making it. And I think it'll be far more enjoyable. But yeah, I don't know if you liked it or enjoyed it, then thank you for watching, I guess. 57 people ended up stopping by at some point and then left like immediately. So I don't blame him. But when I'm working on a project, yeah, I think it'll be better. All right, but yeah, hopefully you learned something.